Getting this live stream going. All right. Hey, thank you so much for joining me. I wanted to talk to you today. Oh, apparently I got a broom in my background. Whoops, should have moved that. But I wanted to talk to you about healing. So I went to an old event. Used to work at the University of Utah. I was on one of the largest longitudinal studies in the country. Might still be the largest longitudinal study in the country. It's called ECHO. It sprang off from the National Children's Study, which followed kids for decades. And then when that collapsed and ran out of funding, Utah created its own cohort called the Utah Children's Project, which then spun into something much larger, which is the Environmental Influence in Child Health Outcomes, or ECHO. Well, anyway, I went up there, right, a bunch of PIs, right, a bunch of different, researchers who are also, doctors and, medical doctors, and, just speaking to the different data coordinators, speaking to the different project managers, and they asked me, hey, what are you doing now? It's been a few years. And I was so full of myself. Oh my gosh, not today, but back when I worked there. Part of it was because I was so full, I was so stuck on politics. Kind of had my head up my ass, and really demanded that the world needed to show up in a very particular way. And if you wanted to basically mind control me, all you have to do is say something about, Orange Man, right, Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton, and I'd immediately, like I was possessed by an agent of the Matrix, be taken over, and you could probably get away with a lot of things because I'd be so distracted by what you just said about Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump, or Bernie Sanders, quite frankly, than to really pay attention to what you're doing. And then I realize now how much that really robbed me of my life. And being able to look at my own life as a case study, right? Well, what did that do? Well, it took me from a state of ease to being out of ease, or in dis-ease, right? And so often we tell people, hey, you better quit stressing like that, or else you're going to give yourself a coronary, right? You're going to have a heart attack. You're going to give yourself cancer stressing like that. And lo and behold, what do people get? Almost consistently. Well, coronaries, right? Heart attacks, cancer. And what's probably the most common way of thinking about ourselves here in America? Well, that we're our own worst enemy. Right. I used to proudly tell people, yeah, I'm my own worst enemy. Look at me. I'm my greatest critic. I chop myself off at the knees before I go running, as if that's something to be proud of. And I want you to think of this in its base elements, right? There's plenty of mystics throughout the world, right? Thousands of years ago that talked about how this is a great illusion that we see. And let's assume for just a second that they weren't idiots and that they weren't morons, but they actually knew something of what they were talking about. And so let's say that there is a great illusion. Is there a way for us to get evidence and get a reference to what this great illusion might be, right? They say that here in this world that we're in, it's a great illusion. Well, Einstein said everything is energy. Max Planck, a contemporary of his who worked with Einstein on different projects, said that consciousness is primary, meaning that whatever the substrate is, consciousness is projected onto that. And then that's what we call reality. Well, and physics proves that what we call, particle matter reality, my hat, my glasses, my microphone, my computer, is nothing more than waves of light, right, that are in a state of potential that spin much slower and collapse as an effect of that into particle matter reality. So everything is just light. And not only is everything just light, but apparently the calculus, right, arithmetic, if you will, is that if you were to remove all of the empty space inside every single human and lump them into one space, it fit in the size of about a sugar cube. Right? And Neil deGrasse Tyson is famous for saying that if you were to take a teaspoon of a neutron star and dump it on Earth, it'd fall all the way through the entire Earth. And because of how dense it is, right? So, well, doesn't that mean that what we see isn't actually what's there? Right? What looks as completely physical and solid might actually be a great illusion. And do we have any reference points to anything that is made of light? that shows us something that's not there. I don't know, maybe a hologram. And if everything's energy, well, I don't know if you're familiar with the, great mystic, Dolores Cannon. So she talked about how God, right, what she calls God, is this giant amalgam of light. And just think of this infinite source of light, and the tiniest, ittiest spark off of that light is what becomes our soul. And this is what Rumi says, right? Because that spark in itself also, since we live in a fractal universe, which is also a hologram, well, inside each piece of the hologram contains the whole. So inside each fragment of light is going to contain the whole light. And Rumi, right, the 14th century poet, right, and mystic, said, you aren't a drop in the ocean, but the ocean in a drop. And that's what that means. So there's a lot of these references to this fractal universe, to this holographic universe, but they didn't really have the language, right? The technological language to say hologram. But now we do. And we've had it for a while, but we aren't typically allowed to think in these ways. Those who effectively control, the world in a matter of speaking, right? You want to control somebody's world, control the way that, they deal with pain. Right, especially, and then make pain very prevalent, right? Put foods in the marketplace that are so full of sugar that cause a lot of damage to blood vessels, that cause a lot of damage to joints. And then when people are inevitably in pain, will then control the way that they manage that pain. And we so often think in chemistry. And chemistry is certainly a very small place, which is great, right? The smaller you go, the more you get into the base to base root. Problem with that is chemistry is still a collapse of that light into particle matter reality. And so what is chemistry also attached to? What is the base of chemistry, the same as the base of all this? Well, light. And so coming back to what Dolores Cannon said, if our soul is light and everything that's in a state of possibility is in a dimension where light lives, where light gets collapsed to pop out of that dimension into this dimension, doesn't that mean that our soul likely lives in that dimension? Because our soul is made of that pure light. And so if that pure light is collapsing, right, the consciousness of that pure light is collapsing to create this reality for us. Well, if we can affect that pure light, then we can affect everything. And that's what it means to heal the soul. And if you heal the soul, well, you're healing the light. You heal the light, everything else heals, because everything else is a function of that light. But the light is the governing agent of everything else. It is the superset, whereas the body and the mind are a container, which are the subsets. Right? The brain is a container for the spiritual mind. Right? The body is the container to give life. And the Hermetics, Hermetic philosophy, said that the all is mind, the universe is mental. Well, mental certainly sounds like consciousness, right? So the universe, and consciousness is primary. So our universe, how we interact, how we, experience things is out of a function of our consciousness. And two people can stand right next to each other, experience the exact same event, but have completely different takeaways as to what it meant. Why? Well, because the universe is mental. And so there's a lot of places where spirituality and consciousness spirituality and science are saying the same thing. But we've convinced ourselves that since they use different words, and they're not. And it's important to take a step back and make sure that we're not being dogmatic, right? Because I saw an incredible YouTube short that blew me away. It was an old scientist out in the field talking to a younger scientist and said, look, so many people think that science is nothing more than a peer-reviewed paper. As if, hey, let's do some science. Well, where's the peer-reviewed paper on it? It's like, well, what if we just go out in the field and we observe and we study and we catalog our findings and we collect our findings? And one of the downsides he's saying about peer reviews means that, well, ultimately the consequence is that everyone agreed with each other. And if everyone agreed with each other, well, there can't be growth, because growth is always going to come away from the middle, right? The middle is where everyone's agreeing. So the growth is going to have to come from the fringe. But if it's coming from the fringe and the only way to get a peer-reviewed paper is for everyone to agree, no one's ever going to agree with the fringe, whether they're right or wrong. And so there's never going to be a chance for that paper to be peer-reviewed. And if people think that peer review means science, then everyone's going to discount actual science because it's not what everyone's saying and everyone agreeing with each other. But if everyone agrees with each other, what does that make it any difference than, say religion? And therein lies a big problem, is that religion can so easily be incredibly dogmatic. And that's what we've done with science, is made it very dogmatic, right? Where's the peer reviewed paper? Where is everyone agreeing with each other? Well, that's not science. I mean, that can be, certainly get some amazing papers written up to say, hey, look at all these disparate voices, disparate, specialties that then prove this idea. And because of that, we've now proved this, and to the point that we can call it a theory. Hey, that's cool. I certainly see value there. But that's academia. Peer review is academia. Academia is politics. It ain't science, right? It can have science involved in it, but it's 100% politics. If there's anything that we saw in 2020 was a breakdown of the scientific consensus when it comes to healthcare based on politics, not on science. And that's what I think has had so many people concerned and so many people woke up, is because, hey, we aren't doing science here, guys. We're just spouting opinion and just telling people to believe while pointing our finger at religion and scoffing. Like, look at those numbskulls. But look at those simpletons who believe, they're gods or their God, right? Well, we're creating a God. Whether it be the avatar to that God may have been, right, Fauci, or the God could have been, say, the V word, right, the jab, or the God could have been, a whole host of things, right? Enter any politician's name and, somebody being lifted up rather than, and then we scoffed at people who said that they did their own research. What are you, a researcher? Oh, how dare you look into things yourself? And like, look, they may not have said that they've done 10 years of extensive research, but likely neither has anyone else. I mean, during that situation with where we said, hey, this is science, but it was actually politics, right? I remember an orange man I was supposed to be very mad at because he was orange and he said a lot of, garish things. Well, he said that he was going to come up with his own jab, and then everyone laughed at him. CNN, MSNBC, and they said, you know what, don't you know, numbskull, it takes 3 to 5 years of research to get something like that out. And then 2 months later, when the orange man was gone, some old guy, he doesn't really seem like he knows where he is. Like his mind isn't quite working that well. Said, hey, I got this thing that the orange man was going to get. And everyone said, hooray, we're saved. Well, wait a minute, it's only been 2 months. And you just laugh saying it's going to take another 3 to 5 years? Took 2 months. Oh, because you weren't telling the truth. You just wanted to wait till the right person had the idea that you wanted to have said or wanted to hear. And it took me a long time to see that, right? I was very anti-orange man, right? Because that was a place of dis-ease in my light. Now, that doesn't mean that I need to be a friend of the orange man. Doesn't mean that you need to be a friend of the orange man. But don't be against somebody, right? There's the idea in the Tao Te Ching that if you give evil nothing to oppose, it'll go away on its own. Not because it's not there, but because you can step out of the way. How do we step out of the way? Well, this doesn't concern me, right? I don't believe that, right? And doesn't mean that I believe something else, just means that I don't need to believe that. And what I've really found that's helped me a lot is if I hear something that confuses me or that challenges my model of the world, I'll actually suspend my need to believe it. That's a powerful idea, right? Think of that. Suspending your need to believe something. So often we'll hear them like, oh, there's no value there, right? Oh, I don't see that. Doesn't make logical sense, right? This idea that if we just chop our brains in half, get rid of the right side, and we only have the left side, is that the logical, side is the only thing that matters. And what I realized about myself, and I see it now in so many people, I can't believe I was so blind to it, but I was stuck in it. So, couldn't see the forest from the trees. And that the logical mind will transform anybody, if it's allowed, into a toddler that'll fold their arms, look at an idea, they'll ask themselves, does this have logical value for me? And if no, then in a matter of seconds, a grown person will revert to a toddler that says that idea is like those vegetables that I've never tried, but I already know I don't like them. I already know. So Niels Bohr, one of the founding scientists, of quantum mechanics, right? His son was getting involved and wrote him a letter, just like, this is crazy. I'm so confused. And his dad, right, Niels Bohr, writes his son and says, "Son, you're not thinking. You're only being logical." So logic has its place, but it's only a framework. And one framework isn't right for everything. We've got to be able to allow for other frameworks that operate at different dimensions, right? Logic has, a lot of value in this dimension, but outside of this dimension, there's not a lot of value. And what creates this dimension? Well, the dimension where light comes from, dimension where our soul is. And in that, does it make sense that this is made of light? Oh, maybe to you. It's hard for my mind to be like, yeah, bro, of course that makes sense. But I just have to, I choose to accept it because the data suggests that it's true. Until I can see updated data that suggests something better, it's the best model of the world that I can move forward with. And it makes a lot of sense because I've seen in real life what happens when you affect that light, right? With Anna Lee, from South Africa, who had a torn bicep tendon for years and years, went to physical therapy, went to an orthopedic surgeon, went to a chiropractor, went to about 7 different specialists that did nothing but cause her more pain. I took her through meditations to connect to her soul, to connect to that governing agent, that light. And then within 4 days, that pain was gone. Pain that she said brought her to her knees. Within 4 days, gone. I'm working with somebody who's got muscular dystrophy, that by the end of the day, right, their head is sinking over and they're having a hard time holding their head up. Well, within 3 days, when I was talking to him, because I met him 3 days later, he said, boy, the thing that surprised me the most is the day later that I woke up and my knee looked normal. Well, yeah, we met because of his neck. We didn't even meet because of his knee. The knee was just something I heard about. Say, okay, well, let's see, about addressing that. His knee's been a problem for 40 years. And then not only that, but he said, does my neck look like it's bothering me? I said, no, it doesn't. He said, exactly. Like, look at it, straight, right? There's no sagging. It's not weak anymore. Well, and this is what happens again when you affect the governing agent. Chemistry does not affect the governing agent. Chemistry affects the container, not that which governs the container and everything inside, which is, again, the soul, the light. And I know that these can be esoteric and obscure ideas, which is why I try to harmonize science and metaphysics and mysticism, because I think that it gives us a reference point that's easier for our brains to say, oh, okay, that at least makes some sense, therefore I can be a little safe with it. Because without feeling safe, well, we're not going to be able to get the healing. Why not? Well, Lao Tzu in the Tao Te Ching said thoughts weaken the mind. And why would that be? Well, if you're in a flow state, right? Say a great football player, if they're overthinking the route they're supposed to run, or they're in their thoughts, they're in their head about the problems that they're having with, at home, they're probably not going to run that route very well. They're probably going to catch that football very well. They're probably going to fumble. They're probably going to make a mistake, because the brain's meant to be an antenna. When you tap into that flow state, well, you're tapping in from your heart. Your heart is what's sending the signal to your brain. Your brain then sends it out as an antenna, right? We already know that the brain can tap into more dimensions than our body can, right? That's a proven fact in physics. And when we allow our brain to then be the antenna and not think of itself as the source of power, well, that's when the magic happens. And Lao Tzu also said, to the still mind, the entire universe surrenders. And that's why, because to the still mind, you can reach the light. To the still mind, you can reach the signal. To the still mind, you can remake your reality. And it's no more complex than that. It's quite simple. It doesn't mean it's easy, right? Most people can't do that. Why? Because they're not special? No, I'm no more special than them. I simply was shown by people who could actually do it. The same way that, what made the disciples of Jesus special? Was it because they were who they were? No, it's because of who their teacher was. Right. And that's why mentors are so important, because mentors are at a place that we want to be and can give us meaningful ways and steps in order to help us get there. And then that's what's so vital about a mentor. So if you want to change your reality, you want to transform your dis-ease into ease, well, you've got to affect the light. But the vast majority of people can't get you to that light. They can talk about it. They might tell you about, different light bodies. They might even tell you that there's 9 different light bodies. They might even say, we're going to access this light body. But here's the thing, like, the more complicated you make it, the more rules you're creating for you to traverse, more hurdles you're creating to traverse. Right? Einstein himself said that if you can't explain it simply, you don't know it well enough. And I know I've been talking here for a while, but I've been, bringing in different analogies and different ways of looking at this. I think that this is probably the simplest way of putting it. The simplest way for me to be able to explain how somebody can heal from a torn tendon within 4 days when they were suffering for years. How a combat veteran can heal their arthritis within a day. Significant arthritis gone in a day, and already going back to the gym, working out. Why? Well, affecting the root cause. And that's literally what happens. And across continents, even. I've worked with people across 5 different continents. And if you, look in the comments or in the description, you'll see that there's a link to, just what people are saying about, about this process and affecting the light. And look there. And if you find that you want the same benefits in your life, well, there's a button there to go ahead and create a healing plan so you can gain freedom from your pain. If that's something that would be important to you, that's something that would transform your life, well, I think you owe it to yourself to investigate, to see at least what are the steps necessary to get there. And again, I'm nobody special, which means that, guess what? You're probably nobody special, which means that you can probably heal as well. It doesn't take somebody special to be able to heal. It just takes somebody willing, with faith, and with the right teachers. That's it. That's it. So we so overcomplicate things because of our left brain. So allow me to help you really transform with that power of your heart, harmonizing that with your left and your right brain. So that way you've got the whole body then working towards the benefit of reaching the soul by quieting the mind, to increase the signal, to transform that light, so it then manifests itself in this particle matter reality in a way in which you've got perfect health as a natural state. This isn't a cure. I'm not going to give you a pill. I'm going to show you how to heal from the inside out. Now, I spent 12 years in hospitals, various different roles, and I've yet to see anything with these types of results. I've never seen anything with these types of results as fast as they come. And again, look, it won't take long, right? A healing plan, and we might talk for 30 minutes. And we can kind of go from there. If, hey, are there some resources that maybe I can point you to? Do you need a little bit more deeper dive? Let's talk about what that would mean. Let's talk about what those resources are and where you can go download them, right? And I've got free resources too. So yeah, go ahead and check out that link and see how you can gain freedom for your pains. Thank you for your time. Again, my name is Joshua Cameron. I'm with Toward Goodness Healing, and change the light, change everything. Thank you so much for your time, and may love and truth always guide your path. Thanks.